Hey mama, are you feeling overwhelmed? Like no matter how hard you try, you're still not the mom you know you were meant to be? I get it, and I'm here to tell you you were designed for more, and together we can get you there. Welcome to the Nature to Nurture podcast. I'm Tiffany, an early childhood specialist, advocate, and mom on this journey with you. I've spent years supporting families and working with children in those critical first 5 years of life, where every moment counts. But here's the thing. The same caregiving practices that help 0 to 5-year-olds thrive are the very same practices that help us, as adults, live purposeful, connected, and thriving lives. It all begins with intention, mindfulness, and showing up for ourselves and our kids. In this podcast, I'll help you discover simple tips and practices for raising your little ones with intention and care, while also guiding you to become the caregiver that you've always wanted to be, the one that you dream of. Each week, I'll share stories from my own life, some practical strategies, and research-backed insights to help you slow down, reconnect, and find joy in the everyday moments. Whether it's creating a bit of time for unstructured play, setting up your nurturing routines, or taking care of yourself as you care for your kids. This is the place for you. If you're ready to embrace the kind of motherhood that feels aligned with who you truly are, be sure to follow the podcast, leave a review, and join our supportive community. We are here to lift each other up every step of the way. All right, Mama, let's dive into today's episode. Hey friend, welcome back to another episode in this series, the second gift. This one is going to be all about the gift of grace. I am super excited that you are here, really and truly. And I want you to know that this space where you're at right now, it's yours. This is a place where you are seen, you are heard, and you are held as you're walking through this journey of growth, parenting, and ultimately self-discovery, right? Today's episode is one that is going to be super special and touchy. It's close to my heart. It is something that I am actively working through right now in real time. It's something that I need to practice every single day, and that is the gift of grace. Grace is one of those things that we know is important, but let's be honest, it is also one of the hardest things to give, especially to ourselves. So I want to take a second and I want to think about what is grace actually? So when I think of the word grace, I actually go back to the biblical meaning of grace, and grace is a gift, a favor, forgiveness for something that is not earned or deserved, right? And as I look at what that actually means for me internally, grace for me is a deep breath. It's forgiving when someone has had a hard day. It's understanding when things don't go as planned. And it is having love when life gets super messy. Grace is all about choosing that connection over correction. It's about meeting someone where they are and not where you are wishing and hoping they would be. And here's the good news. Grace is something that you can choose every single day, even when it's hard. Actually, scratch that. Especially when it's hard. Over the holiday season, I had a moment that cracked me wide open. It was messy and uncomfortable, and it actually lasted for quite a while, longer than after I gave the grace, right? I struggled to forgive myself for this. You see, I had a day during this past holiday season where my body was so exhausted that it had to shut down. I had no choice but to rest. Even though I fought it tooth and nail, I actually ended up having to take 2 days off. I cried on the day before I took the day off because I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to let everyone down. I didn't want to be, honestly, that perfect employee, person, mom, whatever, that I hold myself up to. But I really had no choice. And here's what triggered it. Here's what made me take that step to take that rest. And it's a little embarrassing, but I want to share it with you. We were at the store. We were doing a little bit of Christmas shopping because the kiddos wanted to purchase some gifts for their family. And I do not like to engage in the Christmas craziness. We try to get it all done so that we're not in it. But on this day, we're like, okay, yeah, let's go take the kids. And mind you, I was already feeling exhausted because I was sick. And all of this is already sounding like we're headed into a nightmare. Anyways, we went into Walmart to go and find the special gifts, and it was crazy. The amount of people that were in there was unreal. I was in there with my husband. He doesn't like to look at gifts. He likes to go in and get out. And so he was being short. I was exhausted, overwhelmed. It was way too much noise. I really didn't want to be moving around. It was too much. And as we left Walmart, I snapped at my daughter. She made a little comment to me, which normally wouldn't be a big deal, but these ugly words spilled out of my mouth. These words that I never want to use with her. In fact, these are words that I never really want to hear coming out of my mouth. And immediately I saw her face and I felt regret. I felt disappointment. I felt ashamed. I even felt, honestly, like a little girl that I was hearing those words being said to me as well. Whew. And that shook me. It took me days to let myself feel the weight of that moment and to finally extend grace to myself. In fact, I actually wasn't able to extend that grace until after I was done being sick. But it reminded me of this truth. It reminded me that we are not perfect. We are never meant to be perfect. And that grace is that bridge between who we actually are, right? That truth of who we are and who we want to become. And so today I want to help you feel that same bridge beneath your feet. I want to inspire you to embrace grace as you keep growing into that best version of yourself. When that event happened, I immediately knew that I was wrong. I knew that I needed to give myself rest, break, time. And so when we got home, I actually had been crying the whole entire way from the store to the house because I felt so horrible about what I'd done. I went in, I gave myself an hour and a half to rest, to regroup, and then I went in and I was able to ask my daughter for some grace, for some forgiveness for what I had done, even though it was never okay. I should not be receiving any type of forgiveness for what I said. But I did take that time to kind of explain it to her. And then I had to go through a few more days of actually sitting on it and processing it to be able to extend that grace to myself. So if you've been holding on to some guilt, frustration, or self-doubt, let's unpack that together. Let's explore what it looks like to embrace grace, not just in the big, beautiful moments of life, but also in the messy, everyday chaos of family and parenting. So now I want to ask, what does grace mean to you? For me, grace really is that beautiful combination of compassion and release. It's the quiet permission that it's okay to be human. It's okay to make mistakes and to know that those mistakes don't define us. It's not a label that you have to put on your head whenever you make a mistake. Grace is choosing kindness over judgment. And remember, it's not just for others, but it's also for ourselves. I think that grace feels so hard because, honestly, we live in a world that we see perfection is demanded. We are told to hustle, to achieve, to keep it together, even when we feel like we're falling apart. But grace whispers something different, and it says, you're enough, even when things aren't perfect. Whew. That right there is something that I should plaster all over my walls. You are enough, even when things aren't perfect, even when you aren't perfect. In parenting, grace can show up in the moments that we least expect it, like when your child is melting down in the middle of the grocery store or melting down inside of the car before you're going into a big event. And every instinct tells you to lose your cool. But instead, you pause. You take a deep breath and you remind yourself that they are just learning, just like you are. I want to share a quick example from a moment that I had with my daughter the other day. We were headed into town. I had a ton of meetings that I was doing, and she was tagging along with me as she is doing homeschool, and it was mommy and her day. And we have this as part of our plan. She comes and she does work with me. She does her homework, and I also do my work, right? But she was frustrated that it was going to be a full day. She just wanted to stay at home. She was upset. I don't remember what else was going on, but the car ride in, she had that attitude, that bleh, yeah, everything's horrible attitude. And she was getting so frustrated, and then she started crying. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is something I cannot handle with. I was getting ready to park, so I asked her to get out of the car because I was parallel parking super close to a bush, so I asked her to get out before. She got so upset that I was telling her to get out of the car. And she got out of the car, she went and stand on the side, she turned away from me and was bawling her eyes out. I got out of the car and I was frustrated. I could have said, come on, hurry up, stop your crying. There's no reason to be upset. This is just something that we need to do. But instead, I took a deep breath and I said, oh man, you are having a hard day today, aren't you? She looked at me. I know it can be difficult when we have to go into a space that we don't really want to be. And I understand that today you really wanted to be at home, and that must be really hard. I'm not going to say that it's going to be easy, but I understand that you're going to have these emotions, and it's okay. I'm here for you, and I love you. Do you need a hug? And by not giving her shame and disappointment in the way that she was behaving, I said, it's okay for you to feel that way, and I'm here for you. I love you. I was able to extend that grace for her as well. And when I did that, she ran over to me, gave me a big hug, and she said, I am so sorry I was acting in an ugly way, Mama. And that's when it really hit me. Grace is a gift that we give. It's a gift that we receive. And grace is what strengthens the bonds of love within our family. Now let's take this into some actionable steps. Let's talk about how we can extend grace to our kids and to our spouses, especially in those raw, challenging moments. Okay, make sure you grab a notebook and a pencil so that you are ready to write down these quick points to help you extend that grace. So for your kids, the first thing that we want to do when we are extending grace for our kids is that we want to validate their feelings. This is something that is huge in the early childhood realm. Feelings are not bad. And I know we grew up that many of the feelings that we express are bad feelings, right? When you're mad, that's bad. When you're sad, that's bad. But really, those feelings are not bad. When your child is overwhelmed, instead of dismissing their emotions, try saying something like, I can see you're upset. I'm here to help you. Validation lets them know that their feelings are safe and accepted even when their behavior isn't. Now, I want to make sure that you hear that point. The feelings are always okay. Feelings are not a bad thing. Feelings are not something to be hidden. However, the behavior that we express when we're having those feelings is not always appropriate. So really try to make sure that you are separating the feeling from the behavior. Okay, second step is to really model that grace through an apology. You see, kids learn by watching us. When you lose your temper or when you make a mistake, you need to go and you need to say, I am sorry. This is going to show your kids that no one is perfect, especially mom and dad, and that making amends is actually part of strengthening and maintaining relationships. We all mess up. As a parent, we mess up. As a friend, we mess up. But as a parent, if you don't fess up to those mess ups, you're showing your kids that you're perfect. Or maybe that you think you're perfect. And that ultimately will trickle down to them believing that they too should also be perfect, because after all, they are looking up to you. They ultimately see you as the number one, as the ultimate model, and they are going to want to copy you. So make sure that you are showing them that none of us are perfect, we're human, and that apologies are necessary. Step number 3. This one follows up with that apology. It's that focus on progress is better than focus on perfection. Instead of expecting immediate compliance or perfect behavior from your kids, celebrate their efforts. You can say something like, I notice how hard you tried to clean up your toys today. Thank you so much. You see, grace looks like encouraging that growth rather than demanding on perfection. Let's talk about showering. My son is having his tween teen moment where he does not want to bathe anymore. And so I really am focusing on him bathing at least every other day. And when he does, I say, oh, wow, you did such a great job taking care of your body. You smell so good. I love how you're taking care of yourself. It doesn't mean that he is showering all the time. It doesn't mean that his hair looks great because he's not brushing that hair. It still looks a little crazy, but that's okay. It's all about progress, right? Not perfection. All right, so you might be asking, this is great. I understand I can do that with my kids. They're kids, right? They're learning. They're not going to be perfect. But I want you to take a second and think, how about with your spouse? Do you extend grace to your spouse? Or do you expect them to meet your expectations and to be the perfect partner? Do you get upset when they don't do what you are expecting them to do, when they're not meeting the standards that you have in your head? And this is on a side note. Do they actually even know those standards? We're not going to go about that right now, but let's talk about step number 1 with your spouse. Number 1, assume that they actually have the best interest for you and their relationship when they talk. When tensions get high, pause and remind yourself they are trying to do their best. Maybe they forgot to unload the dishwasher or take out the trash. But maybe their mind was on work or stress or the kids. Don't automatically think that just because they didn't complete the task, they were purposefully trying to frustrate you and annoy you and to do the wrong action. I said that in quotes in case you couldn't see me. After you have made that assumption of positive intent, take a second and speak with compassion. Instead of criticizing them, you can try to say something such as, I could really use some help with dinner tonight, instead of, you never help me cook. This one can be really difficult because honestly, you are feeling down. your bucket is feeling empty. And when you're feeling empty, asking for help in a positive way can be a little bit tricky. But I want you to think about how can you extend that request without being pushy and without having the expectation that they should have done it already, right? So how can you actually share, come from that internal voice, that I statement, right? I am feeling tired tonight and I could really use your help with dinner. Instead of, ugh, I'm exhausted. I don't know why you don't ever cook dinner, right? How can you come at it with a different frame of mind? And then the final step for your spouse is, again, give forgiveness. Small grievances can really build up if we let them, especially if you don't ever say anything. They can stack up one on top of another until you've got this huge wall, and all of a sudden it comes crumbling down and you let go of your frustrations that really were little tiny pebbles but grew up to be a huge landslide, right? And so practice when those little things pop up to confront it and to forgive. And remember, you're confronting it again with compassion, with assuming positive first, and then with forgiveness. Extend that grace to your partner, and hopefully they'll start extending that same grace to you. All right, so we have talked about extending grace to your kids, to your spouse. Now let's pause for a moment and let's focus on you. Because extending grace to yourself is just as important, if not more so. After all, like I said, you can't pour from an empty cup. When you are hard on yourself, you are creating a cycle of guilt and shame that leaves you stuck. But when you choose grace, you give yourself permission to move forward, to grow, and ultimately to let go of that perfection that you're holding yourself to. So let's talk about a few ways that you can really start to give this gift to yourself. A little bit of self-care, right? So number one, make sure that you speak to yourself the same way that you would speak to a friend. Or the way that you hope you would speak to your children. When you are feeling overwhelmed, when you have made a mistake, pause and ask yourself, what would I say to my best friend in this situation? And chances are you would probably offer them words of encouragement and reassurance. And I want you to practice giving yourself that same kind of kindness. So when I was overwhelmed, exhausted, sick, and I didn't want to take off time, I had to go over and say this to myself over and over and over again. My husband was like, come on, take the day off of work. In fact, take 2 days off of work. There's no way that you can go and do this. You can't be around people. You can't even really get out of bed right now. And I was like, telling myself, I'm a failure. I shouldn't be doing this. I can't let everybody down. And I had to think about, what if one of the women in my group told me that they were sick? Would I tell them, no, you can't do that. You have to show up. You have to do this. Of course not. I would tell them, I am so sorry you are not feeling good. Please go and get the rest you need. Take a break. It's okay. Everything will be fine. First, you need to take care of yourself. And the more that I kept on saying, what would I say to one of my ladies? The more I was able to say that to myself. Like, no, you are sick. You have to take a break. You cannot do this. And I was able to extend that grace to myself. Okay, number 2, let go of all of the shoulds, right? We know we can should all over ourselves and it does no good. We carry so many expectations of what we should be doing, right? I should have had more patience with my daughter in the store. I should have a super clean house and not have a sink full of dishes. I should never let my child just heat up some food for dinner. But friend, let those shoulds go and remind yourself that you are doing the best that you can in that moment, and that's enough. And that's okay. You can't always do everything perfect. You can't always do everything correct. And ultimately, you shouldn't be doing, because if you're doing everything right all the time, you're not learning, you're not growing, you're not pushing yourself into the next stage. So let go of all of those shoulds and say, I'm doing what I can do right now, and that's good enough. And that gives you that grace, remember, to get to that other side of where you want to be. Okay, step number 3, make sure that you are celebrating small wins. Sometimes we focus so much on what we didn't do that we forget to celebrate what we did. Did you hug your kiddo today? Did you smile and give your spouse a kiss when they got home? Did you make it through some hard, difficult work without giving up? All of that, that's grace in action. So give yourself a little credit for the little things that you are doing, because ultimately they actually matter more than you're thinking. Number 4, I've spoken about this a couple of times. Take rest without guilt. This is a huge one for me, and I'm sure it's a big one for you as well. Remember, rest is not laziness. Rest is necessary. We all need rest. In fact, when you are looking at anything in the world that is living, it all has a period of rest. Even our seasons give us a period to rest, right? So whether it is taking a nap, sitting in silence for a few minutes, or enjoying a hot cup of tea, please know that rest is not selfish. It is an act of love for yourself and your family. It fills up your cup. When you're feeling depleted, listen to your body and give yourself permission to pause. Now, the final one is one that I've repeated throughout what I've been saying, and that is to rewrite the narrative. When negative self-talk creeps in, when that little voice says you're not good enough, or you're failing as a parent, or you are never going to be successful, pause and challenge it. Rewrite the story in a way that honors your humanity. And instead of saying, I yelled at my child today, try to say, I had a hard moment, but I'm learning and growing every day. Your words have power, so use them to lift yourself up, not tear yourself down. In fact, oftentimes you can even write down those negative words that you're saying to yourself, and you can ask yourself, is that true? Oftentimes, it's not true. Oftentimes, it's something that someone else may have said in our past that we are playing on repeat, but it's not the truth. I know a big one for me that pops up into my head when I don't do something correctly is a story that I was told often when I was younger. If you don't do it correctly, you're a loser. Woo! I don't know if that just hit you as hard as it hit me, but it sure did hit hard. I hate that word. I hate that feeling. And I know that when I mess up, I tell myself that. And I actually have to sit down and remind myself that I am not a loser, that I actually have a lot of great things to celebrate. I do, and have changed and have grown and am being the person that I'm dreaming of. And I literally can write down what are some of those victories, some of those wins, some of those positive attributes about myself when that negative self-talk creeps in. Please remember that your words, whether they are spoken, written, or just in your head, they have power. Use your words to lift yourself up, not to tear yourself down. I want you to remember this. Extending grace to yourself, it is not a luxury. It is truly a necessity. Grace is the foundation for every other relationship in your life. When you show yourself grace, you're modeling it for your children, your partner, and every single person around you. And here's the truth. Grace does not mean that you are ignoring your mistakes or pretending that everything is fine. It means that you are acknowledging that you are human. It means that you are learning from your struggles, and it means that you're continuing to show up with love no matter what is happening around you. Before we wrap up, I'd love for you to take a moment and reflect on a few questions. Maybe even grab that journal and jot down your thoughts. Number 1, how do you usually respond to yourself when you make a mistake? Could grace play a bigger role in that response? Number 2, what's one small way you can extend grace to your kids, to your partner, or to yourself this week? And number 3, here's the fun one. What's a recent moment where you showed grace, even when it was hard? I would love to hear your answers. Seriously. Please head over to speakpipe.com/nature to nurture. I've got the link down in the show notes, and leave me a voice message. At the end of the month, I'll be responding to your messages live on the podcast, and I'm going to be using this as a way for us to connect, to share those beautiful stories of grace together. And if speaking and leaving me a voice message doesn't speak to you, you can also jump into the Nature to Nurture Facebook group where we are having conversations about this and so much more. All right, my friend, as you go about your week, here's your reminder. Grace is a gift you can give yourself freely. It's a gift that you can give to your kids and to your partner. It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up with love again and again. And if this episode spoke to you, it would really mean so much if you would take just a second to rate and review this podcast on whatever platform you're listening on, because your feedback is going to help other parents to find Nature to Nurture. And honestly, it's a little way to spread grace to someone else. Until next time, keep nurturing yourself, your family, and your connection to this beautiful world that we live in. You're doing incredible work, and I am so proud of you. Talk to you soon.